Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my early thoughts and transfer plans ahead of Game Week 8. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, before we take a look at my team for Game Week 8, my current transfer plans, and also plans for future weeks, like there is a fixture swing in Game Week 9 and Game Week 12. We'll take a look at all of that in a bit. But right now, let's briefly review Game Week 7. And it was another pretty good game week for me. The week that I've wildcarded is a green arrow, and you can't really ask for much more than that. And that is now 3 green arrows in a row. And based on the first 4 game weeks, I was under the impression you could only get red arrows in FPL. So it's nice to see that colour green going into the international break. So yeah, 59 points for me this week. I've gone from 2.8 mil to 1.9 mil. If you tuned into my deadline stream, by the way, if you do tune into the streams, I really appreciate it. You'll know that I said, well, my next goal is top 2 million, but I highly doubt I'll do that this week. I've just about snuck in there. And I suppose the next goal for me is maybe 1.5 million, then 1 million. Like, I'm taking it step by step. I'm not expecting to go from 2.8 mil to top 10k. And I don't really want to at this stage. Like, I'm just enjoying getting these small green arrows and just progressing slowly with my rank. And that's all you can do. And at the end of the day, I say this all the time, we really can't control the outcome in FPL. All you can do is put out a team that you are happy with and hope that you get a little bit of luck. Because as much as FPL is a game of skill, otherwise we wouldn't bother. If it was all luck, none of us would bother with it. But there is such a large proportion of it that is luck, because you can't control what the players decide to do at the weekend. Does someone decide to score a stupid own goal, or make a massive error that loses you the clean sheet, or score a wonder goal from 40 yards after you've sold them? Like, so many things can happen in FPL that we can't control. So just put out the team that you're happy with and just cross your fingers. And lately, I've been getting a little bit more of the good luck, which is what we need in our lives. So yeah, 59 points. And if you are new to the channel, firstly, please do consider subscribing. But I wildcarded in Game Week 7. And to get a green arrow on a wildcard, it's a lovely feeling. And honestly, even if you ignore the green arrow, which is difficult to do, I know, I wouldn't change a single pick that I made on wildcard. I'm going to discuss all of them throughout this video, and you might be looking at them, some of them now, maybe someone like a Leif Davis, and thinking, are you sure about that? Genuinely wouldn't change any of the 15, and that's such a good feeling, because normally post wildcard you have some regrets. There are normally like 2-3 players or a certain structure you've gone with, like Game Week 6 wildcard. I know a lot of people regretted not going for Cole Palmer and going for Trent instead, for example. I'm just really happy with the picks. And I went into Game Week 7, even before the outcome, with just such a state of like zen and peace, which I know sounds strange, but I was just really content with the wildcard that I built. And I'm really happy with it moving forward as well. So the key decision for me going into Game Week 7 was, do I want to own 2 or 3 premium attackers? I opted for 3. I, of course, was going to have Erling Haaland with the fixtures coming up. That man decides to blank, which we'll discuss in a second. And also, I wanted to have Palmer and Saka. And I'm so delighted that I chose Palmer, Saka, and Haaland, because I still think going forward now, those are probably the 3 that I want to own. Palmer, I know the fixtures coming up aren't great, and I knew that this week against a very good Forest defence, he probably wasn't going to monster haul, which is why I did not consider him for even a second for captaincy. He gets the single assist, which is absolutely fine. Like, if he just gets 1 or 2 returns every now and again, maybe over the next couple of difficult fixtures, maybe gets like 3 or 4 returns over the next 5 weeks, I'm okay with that, because then I have him in place for Game Week 12 and beyond, which is when I really want him. So I'm still very happy that I chose Cole Palmer, and I'm also delighted that I didn't opt to go without Saka, because there was some temptation, if I wanted Palmer and I wanted Haaland, to go with Havertz instead of Saka. And by the way, Havertz has been brilliant. He returns once again. But Saka has been so good recently. The creativity on that man, he is creating big chances left, right, and centre. And we also know that he does have the ability to score goals as well. So to get that 16-pointer was great. I did briefly consider him for captaincy. In fact, I had quite a strong consideration for him. But I went for Haaland, and that's that. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, if I'd have captained Saka, then I'd be at this rank. I didn't. I captained Haaland, and it's one of those things that it was quite nice to captain Haaland, even though he blanked, and people are saying that I broke Haaland. And by the way, feel free to blame me down below in the comments if I broke Haaland. I'm sorry. It felt nice not to be stressed about Haaland absolutely battering and destroying my rank. So I'm going to say it was still a successful weekend, and I don't really mind that he blanked. It's one of those things. Yes, he's blanked in 2 games in a row now. Is there some concern that maybe he's dropped off a little bit? And obviously we knew that it was unsustainable what he did in the first 5 weeks, scoring 10 goals. But yeah, there is a bit of a worry now that we are paying 15.4 million now for an asset that has blanked twice in a row in 2 fixtures where you would expect him to score goals. But the next 2 games against Wolves and Southampton, prime captaincy material again. So I'm still happy I chose Haaland. Again, if I could go back now, I would still have Haaland, because the alternative draft that I was going to go for without Haaland had Watkins and Foden. both of whom blanked anyway. I would have captained Saka, so that's the only thing. But generally, I guess what I wanted to say is I'm still very happy with the Palmer, Saka and Haaland structure that I decided to go for. That, of course, meant that I went without Trent. And Trent did get an 8-pointer, which hurts a little bit because I've had him all season. But again, what can you do? You can't own everyone. And that was Trent's last decent fixture for a while now. And I'm not expecting many clean sheets in the upcoming weeks. And also, Trent's attacking data, whilst it was pretty decent actually in game week 7, it's not as good as it was in those opening 2 or 3 games. And I do think fixtures play a massive part in that. So I'm still largely pretty happy with the decision to drop Trent, despite the fact that I still think he's a great asset to own. Outside of that, double Arsenal defence, very frustrating. They've now conceded against, obviously, Leicester at home and Southampton at home. By the way, across those 2 games, they conceded 0.9 XGC. So even across both games in which they conceded 3 goals and lost both clean sheets, they still haven't even accumulated an expected goal. So I wouldn't say they're massively unlucky to concede, but you could have quite comfortably seen at least 1, if not 2 clean sheets, especially against Leicester last week, actually. They only conceded about 0.27 XGC. So if you've had double Arsenal defence over the last couple of weeks, very unlucky. The thing is with Arsenal, they'll keep clean sheets when you don't expect it. They could concede against Bournemouth, but then if they kept a clean sheet against Liverpool, Newcastle and Chelsea, you wouldn't be massively surprised. So with double Arsenal defence, you've kind of just got to stick with it, play them every week and just hope that you get clean sheets. So I'm not too stressed there. Rico Lewis obviously got the assist and conceded. By the way, Man City were horrible defensively, like absolutely horrible. Adama had 3 big chances and over 1 XG by himself. Fulham actually had 5 big chances. Man City only had 1. Like, Fulham absolutely battered City for what it's worth. And yes, that isn't great moving forward because you want Lewis to have clean sheets as well as attacking threat, but I still think he played really well. The assist was actually very lucky. He just passed the ball sideways and Doku twatted it top bins. But this is what you own him for because he's in those attacking positions. So I'm still happy to have Lewis. Right, this is the one where people aren't going to like this, and I've had already loads of comments around this. Davis 0-pointer. Davis had higher XGI than 8 Nuri, who sat on my bench with 9 points. He had 0.34 XGI, which was a massive chance that he created for Greaves. And when I look at this overall right now, nobody's keeping clean sheets on a consistent basis. Even Arsenal aren't. Liverpool are the only team that really are, but they've had exceptionally good fixtures. So if teams aren't keeping clean sheets on a consistent basis, and most teams aren't even keeping clean sheets, let alone consistently, why would I not own defenders that have a lot more attacking threat? And I know Davis and even 8 Nuri to some extent are basically showing that they're going to concede 2 to 4 goals every game. And so for bonus points, they are going to struggle to get bonus points. So that is absolutely something worth noting. But they both showed in game week 7 how attacking they are. Davis had higher XGI than 8 Nuri. He created a huge chance, should have really come away with an assist if not for a massive miss by Greaves. And 8 Nuri gets a goal and an assist. So this won't be for everyone. Some people will look at it and say you can't own a defender from Ipswich and a defender from Wolves, and you need to start at least one of them every week. You just can't do it. But I think with the fixtures coming up, when teams aren't keeping clean sheets, I can't afford a Trent in that position anyway. So you could say, yeah, go for a Liverpool defender. But other than Canate, who doesn't have good fixtures coming up anyway, who am I owning? You might point to Van der Ven or Colwill. They both conceded again. So I'd rather own Davis and 8 Nuri, who are so attacking. Leif Davis is on every single set piece. Free kicks, corners, in-swinging, out-swinging. He's a player that I really enjoy. Like, I'm still delighted with the Leif Davis pick. Now, of course, I would have rather start 8 Nuri for his golden assist, but because I had Brian Mbeumo, I just thought, you know what, I won't hedge my bets, I suppose. I'll just go all in on Brentford scoring and I'll play Leif Davis. It just so happens that Brentford did score 5 goals, but 8 Nuri got the golden assist. So I'm not too fussed about that, but I'm very, very, very happy to have Leif Davis and 8 Nuri. What else was there to talk about? Brian Mbeumo getting only a penalty in a 5-goal rout against Wolves. So a little bit disappointing, but in general, his play was very good in that game. And Mbeumo is just everything you want, right? Set pieces, penalties, minutes, data. Brentford score goals as well. So really happy to have Brian Mbeumo, and he's just such good value at that price. Rodgers, I was actually at Villa Park. I think Rodgers and Villa were extremely disappointing, but he still played 90 minutes. He still had chances for him and for his teammates. And on another day, it maybe clicks a little bit better and Rodgers gets something. So I'm still happy that I have Rodgers, but I was very disappointed with Villa's performance. Solanke only gets a single assist, and he actually had 0 shots in that entire game. That's not good, considering in that first half, Spurs were so dominant and Solanke still didn't have a single shot. it does feel like Solanke is distracting the defenders, dropping deep and occupying the defence to allow Timo Werner and Johnson, which will eventually be Son and Johnson, to get those chances to score goals. So I do understand it's a lot of money to pay for someone that isn't getting that many chances. However, I point back to in game week 5 and 6, he had 7 big chances in 2 weeks. So I don't want to be overly reactionary here, but yeah, a single assist in that game was a little bit frustrating. It felt like there could be more for him there. And then the only other player I did leave the best till last was actually Cunha. Now, this was a real gut feeling pick. He's still, at my rank, he's 0.7% owned. So a massive differential, like less than 1 in 100 managers own him. And it feels nice to own a player that goes and gets a 9-pointer. For me, it was between Cunha and Brennan Johnson. Brennan Johnson also scored, by the way, in a 3-5-2 I could have played. But Cunha did outscore him. And I'm really happy to have Cunha because the data was actually really good in game week 7. He had 0.71 XGI. We know that he's probably on penalties. He's a 90-minute man. The fixtures are there. And for everything that you say about Wolves defensively, because they did look really shocking, they do still create chances. So I'm actually really, really happy with the Cunha pick. And it feels so good for a gut feeling differential pick to come in. So there we go. A little bit of a rambly long section about game week 7, but I wanted to review the wildcard and how it's gone. Let's now move ahead to game week 8 and look at how my team is currently looking. So guys, I've obviously gone through and discussed a lot of the players just there, so this section might be a little bit shorter, but I just want to go through and discuss the players moving forward. Like, you know that I'm very happy with this team, so obviously I don't plan on changing much, but there might be some players that I'm looking at maybe selling in the more short term and some players that I just know that I definitely want to keep in the long term. And something that I am pretty sure I still want to do in the long term is have double Arsenal defence, because as much as, yes, they've just conceded twice in a row now against Leicester at home and Southampton at home, as I said, the clean sheets with Arsenal are so unpredictable that I'm not too fussed. Over the next 4, I still expect 2 clean sheets for Arsenal at least. And I know that's crazy to say when they've got Liverpool, Newcastle, Chelsea, and even Bournemouth, by the way, have been attacking fairly well apart from in game week 7. I still think there are clean sheets there for Arsenal. And you can't jump off them straight away just because they've struggled in 2 games. And in general, they haven't struggled. They've not given up many chances, but they've just managed to find a way to concede. And obviously, if that goes on a consistent basis now, maybe we start to worry, because there is something to say. Arsenal haven't been as good defensively this season as they were last season. They are giving up more chances. I kept pointing to the fact that Raya making lots of saves is evidence that Arsenal aren't quite as tight defensively as they were last year. So yeah, maybe in game week 12, if over this spell Arsenal still don't look as strong defensively and we're not seeing those clean sheets, and maybe Liverpool continue to look really good defensively, maybe I look at it and think, do you know what? I'm going to free up 1 million and go from Gabriel to Trent. Or I'm going to go for Van Dijk. Or I'm going to save money and go for Konate. So it might be that Liverpool are the new defence to target. But for now, I'm so happy to still have Raya and Gabriel. No issues there at all. Rico Lewis is an interesting one. Let's see what happens over the international break. Let's see if we get any... Oh, we won't get any early team news, actually, because I think Man City play on Sunday in game week 8. So we're probably not going to know. And listen, based on their performance against Fulham, I'm not really thinking there's a clean sheet there. But when he starts, we know the upside is there. And I do still think that City are an okay defence. Like, they were shocking against Wolves. But I think Adama Traore's pace just caused them so many issues. And I think this will be a slightly different game for them. So I'm still fine having Lewis. And to be honest, my bench isn't really good enough to consider benching him this week. Like, my other defenders are Vandenberg and Ait-Nouri. So Lewis is fine. And then Leif Davis, again, I'm so absolutely fine starting him because of the attacking threat, because he's on set pieces. And actually, I think this is a good fixture for him against Everton at home. So defensive-wise, I'm fine. I obviously have Vandenberg and Ait-Nouri on the bench. Not ideal that they both have pretty rough fixtures this week. But if I ended up having to start Vandenberg or Ait-Nouri, Ait-Nouri's got attacking threat. You never know what you might get there. And Vandenberg against Man United, assuming Man United still have Ten Hag in charge, that could be a clean sheet, and he could get some attacking returns as well, especially as he's going down that right-hand side, which is where we concede a lot of our chances down our left. So I wouldn't have a massive issue if we found out that Lewis wasn't going to start or something happened and I had to start one of them. That's absolutely fine. So defensive-wise, I know people will look at it and say it's very weak. I just don't really care. I don't want to invest loads more money at the moment because I think where I want to invest the money is in the attack, and I'm happy with my 3 premium structure. So with the attack, I knew that most of these players would start every week. So I've got Mbeumo, Palmer, Saka, Rodgers, Solanke, Haaland, and even to some extent Cunha. Like, they're all 90-minute men, and a lot of them are on penalties. Penalties for Palmer, Mbeumo, Saka, Solanke when Son's not there, and maybe Solanke anyway, Haaland and Cunha. Like, there's penalty takers, and there's 90 minutes, and that's what I wanted as much as possible. So I knew that most of these players would play pretty much every week, and obviously Palmer and Saka, I'm never going to bench them. Haaland, I'm never going to bench. And Burma, I'm probably not going to. And Solanke's got a great fixture. So I've then, I would say, got 3 players where I need to play 2 of them this week if I don't make a transfer, which is Dibbling, Rogers, and Cunha. Now, the idea behind Dibbling, like the reason I chose Dibbling was 2 reasons, right? He's very cheap, and I knew that I didn't have the funds in this current structure to go elsewhere. I couldn't even afford someone like a Carvalho. But also, I looked at Game Week 8 and he had Leicester at home. And the only week coming up that I don't want to play Cunha, because Cunha's now got good fixtures up until like Game Week 18. They're ridiculous, the run of fixtures for Wolves. The only week that I didn't want to play Cunha, really, was Game Week 8 against Man City at home. So I looked, by the way, I've just realised the defender above Cunha in the mid against Ait Nouri. Please ignore that. So this week, the idea was let's play Dibbling against Leicester at home. But 2 things. Cunha really impressed me, as did Wolves. Going forward, by the way, not defensively, but going forward, I thought they were pretty decent. Cunha's on penalties, and Man City were abysmal defensively. I think that Wolves could cause them some problems, not maybe to the same extent as Fulham, but I think there is the chance, especially given that it's at Molineux, right? It's not at the Etihad. So I'm now wondering, do I potentially want to play Cunha instead of Dibbling or Rogers? But maybe that's a bit reactionary, right? Because it is still Man City. I am still starting Lewis. So maybe I just bet on a Man City clean sheet, stick to the plan of benching Cunha and play Dibbling and Rogers. Rogers, I think, probably still makes sense to start, right? Because he is a very good asset. Nothing's really changed. I was disappointed with his performance in Game Week 7. So really, it probably is Dibbling or Cunha. Dibbling, I thought, was very good against Arsenal, though. There was one moment when he absolutely skinned Calafiori, and I think generally he looks very lively. I just worry, like, if he was on the bench, I wouldn't be surprised because Russell Martin doesn't seem to have a massive idea about what he's doing. So if the team sheets came out and Dibbling wasn't in the 11, I wouldn't be that surprised. Whereas with Cunha, you just know that he's going to start every time. So yeah, let me know. I mean, I don't need to decide this now. I've got a couple of weeks to think about it. And maybe something will happen over the international break. If one of my other attackers picks up an injury, I'll be starting Dibbling and Cunha anyway. But let's say I don't have any major issues in the team and no major injuries. Who would you start out of Dibbling and Cunha? So after I make that decision, if we just look at the team in its entirety, I don't think I desperately need a transfer at the moment. And there was no plan to use a transfer in Game Week 8. I've got 2 free transfers to use. So if I decided I wanted to rejig funds around or make a couple of moves, I could. But really, I don't look at it as having many major weak points. The only places that people will point to is the Davis spot. But there aren't any other 4.5, 4.6 million defenders that I would want more. And I really like the fact that I can rotate him and Ait Nouri. We might point to Lewis as being a slightly longer term issue. I would like to free up some funds and maybe get to move to someone like a Pedro Porro, for example. Again, at his price, I just don't see a better value alternative. And then maybe you could argue that it's a little bit weak in that sort of 8th attacker spot in Dibbling. But again, I don't have the funds to move that around now. Eventually, I would absolutely like to move Dibbling up to someone around 5.5. See, I don't think this team's desperately missing anyone, really, or like missing a certain type of player or a certain structure. So I'm pretty happy with it for Game Week 8. That being said, I do have a little bit of a watch list put together. So let's take a look at the players that I'm currently considering maybe moving for in either Game Week 8 or some of the future weeks as well. So guys, as I said, whilst I don't really feel the desperate need to use a transfer in Game Week 8 at the moment, things crop up over the international break, and if players do get injured, I wanted to at least build a watch list to say, right, if I do need to make a defender transfer or a midfield transfer, who are the players that I'm currently considering? So I've currently got 3 defenders, 3 midfielders, and 3 forwards. This list obviously isn't exhaustive. There are other players that I'm currently looking at, but starting with the defence, they are all slightly more expensive than I currently have in my setup at the moment. So I can't really move for any of these at the moment. It would be 2 transfers. But the players that I'm currently looking at are Porro, Canate, and Gusto. On Pedro Porro, Spurs' defensive data continues to be decent. I know they absolutely capitulated against Brighton, but in that first half, they were very dominant. And these things happen in football where the momentum just shifts. And Brighton are a very good attack, by the way. Generally, Spurs, under Postecoglou, by the way, the defensive data has not been bad across the entirety of his reign thus far. Even last season, they were actually very decent for large spells. They just find a way to concede, a bit like Man City. But I don't mind the idea of Porro from a defensive perspective, but why you really own him is from an attacking perspective, right? This is why I didn't go for Van der Ven, because whilst Van der Ven, again, will have the clean sheet potential that Porro does, he doesn't have that same attacking threat. So with Porro, you do need the clean sheets. You can't have a player at that price not getting clean sheets. They can't just have attacking threat. but you do mainly own him for the ability to pick up goals and assists. So I do still like the idea of moving for Porro, but I feel like the longer you leave it with Spurs, their fixtures around game week 12 onwards when they play against Man City, they start to turn. So I feel like if I'm going to bring in Porro, it's kind of got to be this week. So if I don't end up making a defender transfer now, I'm probably saying no to Porro until maybe post-Christmas time, kind of 1920 onwards potentially. So there's the temptation, but I'm just not really in the structure to get there. A player that is slightly cheaper and is playing for arguably the best defence at the moment in terms of clean sheet, and even underlying data is strong, and that is Liverpool. Konate, he's great. Like, he's got more attacking returns than Trent this season. He's basically doing what Trent is doing for so much cheaper, like almost 2 million less. So yeah, Konate is a real option, and assuming he continues to start, I do think at some point Konate will be in my team. I can almost guarantee it, as long as he keeps a place in that team, and as long as Liverpool don't really now regress when they've got the more difficult fixtures in terms of defensive numbers. So Konate is an option, and I've put Gusto here. I still think Chelsea have been okay defensively. Again, a team that do find a way to concede quite often, and he's got a little bit of attacking threat. Like, the reason I didn't go for someone like a Colwell again is because I just don't want to bring in a defender that's not brilliant for clean sheets and also carries no real attacking threat. At least with Gusto and Porro, that they've got a bit of something about them in terms of going forward. The thing is, I don't know if Gusto's nailed. Like, he's played 90 minutes in the last 2 games, but they can play Dazassi at right back. They've got other options that even like Wesley Fofana, I think, played a game at right back as well. So they've got options, but Gusto's definitely on my watch list. I think he's at 4.9 million now. If he drops again for some reason, or he's around that price sub 5, he's certainly in my consideration. But as you can tell, like, I'm just not enamored by any of the defenders in FPL at the moment. It's why I chose Leif Davis and Ait-Nouri, because I'm just like, who do I really want to own other than those really expensive assets that you can't really afford if you want the expensive attackers? In midfield, it's still Spurs for me. Even after that really bad second half, I look at Kulusevski, Johnson, Son, Maddison, who's not on this list. They're all really, really good in their own right. Even at his price of 1 million more than Johnson, Maddison is delivering and he's so good for bonus points. Johnson has now scored 6 games in a row. He's on fire. Kulusevski, I know, didn't return, and that's very frustrating for owners, but he looked really good once again. He was almost involved in a couple of goals. And I've put Son on here because, assuming that Son is back for Game Week 8, I've got a feeling that the way that Spurs are absolutely cooking at the moment in their attack, Son will just slot into that attack, and I've got a feeling that he could go on a really nice run. And if I did want to take a risk from maybe like Game Week 9 onwards when Saka's fixtures start to turn, going for a Heung-min Son, I don't mind. He's actually a really decent captaincy option, I think, in Game Week 11 against Ipswich. So Sonny is a real temptation for me, and I'll definitely be assessing that once we see him back in the 11. Obviously not for Game Week 8, but for Game Week 9 and beyond, my eye is on Son. So yeah, Son and Johnson for me are 2 players that I'm looking at. Again, it's just like I can't squeeze them in right now because I don't desperately want to sell any of my players. And then I've got like Dibbling and Rodgers that I suppose I wouldn't mind selling for someone like Johnson, but I don't have the money to do it, and I don't have an obvious place to free up the funds. The only other player is Foden, who I was very close to picking on the wildcard, in all honesty, because I love Phil Foden. I'm glad I didn't, because he didn't look particularly good. Didn't get 90 minutes. I think he came off around 75 minutes. It just wasn't a great performance for him. I think he still doesn't look quite there. And so I look at it now, and Game Week 9, he's got Southampton at home. That was the temptation, is in Game Week 9, sell Saka for Foden. But after that Southampton game, they've got 2 more okay games, and then they go into a slightly trickier fixture run. So I just think, do you know what? I might just swerve Foden for now, and I might just keep Saka through the difficult fixtures. And if I do want to sell Saka, as I just said, I've got the option of Heung-min Son. So that's currently where I'm standing with the premiums, but I'm really just happy with Palmer and Saka. I feel no need to sell them in the difficult fixtures because they're on set pieces, they're on penalties, and they are so integral to what their teams do. You cannot tell me that you don't expect Arsenal and Chelsea to score goals in difficult fixtures. And if they are, well, then Palmer and Saka are going to be involved in at least, I would say, 40 to 50% of their team's goals. So you're expecting returns from them regardless. So yeah, I'm kind of happy keeping Palmer and Saka for now. But those are the midfielders that I'm currently looking at. Dwight McNeil, you could maybe chuck in there as well due to the nice fixtures. And then with the forwards, again, I'm not that desperate to sell Solanke, Cunha or Haaland, but if I were to, Chris Wood is ticking along so well. Like, the underlying data is strong, the minutes still continues to be pretty good, and the fixtures over the next 3 are actually really nice for Forest. So if I was to pick up an injury to a Cunha or a Solanke, or I wanted to downgrade Solanke to free up the funds to, again, if I wanted to move for like a Pedro Porro in defence, I could do that kind of thing. It would be probably Chris Wood that I'd be looking at. He's such a just like an unsexy pick. Like, I don't really want to put him in my team. Like, it feels boring, but he just is such good value. And Forest are just a really decent team. Like, they're much better defensively than going forward, but still, Chris Wood seems to be a pretty good pick. Delap is scoring goals at the moment. The thing is, his data is so bad still. I think he's had like 0.4 XG for like 3 goals. He's clearly a very good finisher, by the way. Like, we've seen him take the goals very well, but the underlying data is not there for me. And I am a mainly data-driven manager. So for me, Delap's probably not at the top of the watch list, but he's definitely there because he's so cheap. And then I've got Welbeck, because Welbeck just continues scoring and continues putting up ridiculous numbers. And with João Pedro not in the team, Welbeck's still probably, we think, on penalties. So you've got a penalty-taking forward that is scoring goals for fun, playing an attacking Brighton team. The thing is, the fixtures just aren't really there till game week 12 for Brighton. So I'm probably not looking at Welbeck or maybe eventually João Pedro until game week 12. So I guess you can see here, by the fact that my watch list doesn't include that many great players, and also that I'm like, oh, I don't really need him right now. Like, I don't look at my team and feel like it desperately needs any of these moves, which is a great position to be in, because it means I'm pretty happy with it, right? This is just a reminder. It's not perfect. There are definitely players that, yeah, in an ideal world, I would have Trent rather than Davis, but we can't afford all of that. So, yeah, that's the team. Let's just very briefly now, to end the video, look ahead to sort of game week 9, 10, 11, 12, and just where I'm envisioning my transfers being used. And if I feel like I need any, or if I'm just going to try and roll and get to that gold standard 5-3 transfers at some point, which we know will never happen. So guys, jumping over to Fantasy Football Hub to just plan ahead and look at some of my future moves. And if you do want to get access to Fantasy Football Hub, especially over the international break, just have a bit of a tinker, especially if you're maybe on your wild card, do please consider using the link down below. You can currently get 30% off, and I believe still the free trial as well. So feel free to just check it out for free using the link down below. Get that free trial. Just have a bit of a play around with the site and just see if you get on with it, because it's something that I love using. And again, I couldn't imagine doing fantasy football now without Fantasy Football Hub. You can even get AI recommended transfers, which we might look at in a second as well. But for Game Week 8, they actually do recommend playing Cunha. They just aren't as keen on Dibbling. Like, the algorithm doesn't like Dibbling. So each week they'll suggest not playing Dibbling, which in all fairness is arguably the correct thing. The other player that they're not that keen on is Rico Lewis, which again may not be particularly wrong when we look at the potential issues with these minutes moving forward. But let's just say that the team, I don't know who I'm going to play out of Dibbling and Cunha. I'd still love your opinion down below. For Game Week 8, let's say that I do somehow manage to get through the international break absolutely fine, and I decide to roll the transfer going into Game Week 9. That would mean going into Game Week 9, I have 3 free transfers, and this would be the way that the team's set up. So in terms of defence, I have Raya and Gabriel against Liverpool. It's one of those where on paper you look at it and you don't like it, but again, we have to keep faith with Arsenal defence, because they showed against PSG, they showed against Spurs, was it? Like, they can keep clean sheets against absolutely anyone. So you have to stick with them in the difficult fixtures. I've then got Lewis against Southampton. Hopefully he plays. I have Ryan Aït-Nouri against Brighton, Vandenberg against Ipswich, and Davis against Brentford. This is one of those weeks where if everyone does play, and let's say Rico Lewis does start, I do have a bit of a benching headache. I'd probably go, if he's still starting at that stage, probably with Vandenberg. But there is some part of me, it's just like, just start your more attacking defenders, because Ipswich still probably score against Brentford. So maybe we'll start like an Aït-Nouri. I don't know. Let's see if Aït-Nouri's still attacking very well. But when I look at the attackers again, Haaland, Solanke, Cunha are absolutely fine for those 3 against Brighton, Palace, and Southampton. Then I've got Palmer and Saka. I'm just going to keep them through this period at the moment. That's the plan. And Mbeumo against Ipswich and Rodgers against Bournemouth. And because I've got defenders with decent fixtures, I've even got a bit of bench cover if I want to tuck Dibbling as my 3rd sub. So there is the possibility at this stage, like I said, to move for Foden. Saka to Foden for the next 3, when Saka's got Liverpool, Newcastle, Chelsea, Foden has Southampton, Bournemouth, Brighton. That is a possibility. But then I'm like, do I think Foden massively outscores Saka? Maybe, but I'd need to see a bit more from Foden probably in the Wolves game to be confident. And also, am I confident Foden starts all 3 of them? Not overly. And if he's only starting 2, and I probably want Saka back from game week 12, when he's got Forest, West Ham, United in those 3 weeks, I kind of feel like I might just stick with Saka at this point. So I might be in a... Listen, I'm not going to be able to keep... There will be injuries and other issues. I'm not going to be able to keep rolling. But on paper, hypothetically, it feels like I could just keep rolling with this team, which is why I built the wild card the way I did. But yeah, Game Week 9 looks fine. Game Week 10 looks fine. Again, my defender rotation works quite well. Leif Davis comes back in at this point, probably for Lewis. And I might start Aït-Nouri and Lewis, both with home fixtures this week, or that week, which is Game Week 10. The attack has a really nice set of fixtures as well. Like, I don't have to sell Solanke. He's got 2 more good fixtures. I knew that I would be happy keeping Cunha through this spell. The only thing that I'm considering at this point is Rodgers has Tottenham and Liverpool away back to back, and I don't really. Well, I could play Dibbling against Everton or Wolves. Like maybe if Dibbling's still starting at this point and Southampton are improving, I've got that possibility. But then I am looking at that and saying at this stage, like Rodgers you could just start him against anyone, but at the same time it doesn't look great. But then to free up funds to move him to anyone that I'd really want to, I'd obviously have to make a move. The other option I have is if Carvalho's still getting really good minutes at that point, I do have the option of just moving to Carvalho because he's got a much better set of fixtures against Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton. But that feels a little bit like, again, is that a good use for transfer? Do I just keep continuing to roll? Which I know is crazy to say because I'm not going to be able to. And I need to not be too patient and passive. But I have just wildcarded in 7. So I would ideally like to be looking at my team long term and thinking it looks fine. In Game Week 11... this feels like a week where everyone will probably try their best to roll because there is a big fixture swing coming in Game Week 12. So I can imagine regardless of your strategy, trying to not use your transfers in 11 and get them through to 12 might be good. So again, defensively, I'm fine because I can play Vandenberg against Bournemouth at home, 8-0 against Southampton at home, and I just continue playing my double Arsenal defence. Attack looks fine. I've got Cunha against Southampton, Solanke against Ipswich. But where it starts to turn is Game Week 12, Spurs go on a slightly trickier fixture run, especially they've got City and Fulham and then Bournemouth. It's not an awful run, actually, particularly, but it's not as good as the previous 5. And obviously, Solanke is very expensive, and if he's still disappointing at this stage, then there's the option to remove him there. And also, we then go into a really nice fixture run for Arsenal, if you removed any of them in that more difficult spell, but especially Chelsea. So something that I'm eyeing up at the moment is getting maybe... if he's still getting good minutes, Nicholas Jackson in this spot here for Solanke, I think will be really popular. The other possibility is, at this stage, maybe removing Erling Haaland to pivot to a Mohamed Salah, which might not feel very popular at the moment, but there is the option there for me if I want to. But I'd have to probably make a good few moves. So this is why, if I can get to a stage, ideally, where I've got like 4 or 5 free transfers going into Game Week 12, where I can basically give myself a little mini wildcard, I feel like that would be a really good position to be in. That's why I'm not that desperate to use transfers now, because I want to try and stack a few up so that I can be in a really strong position for this Game Week 12 fixture swing. But this is why I'm really glad that I chose my Wolves players, because they've got in a really nice spell of fixtures from Game Week 12 and beyond as well. I think it's a nice team. I'm pretty happy with the wild card still. And obviously I would be because I've got a green arrow. But yeah, I'm happy with the way it's set up. I'm not going to keep planning beyond that because let's be real. I'll probably get like 4 injuries over the international break and be sobbing by the time the Game Week 8 deadline comes around. But yeah, there it is. If I just go back to my team, is it still there? Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the team. Let me know what your plans are for Game Week 8 as well. There will be an FPL therapy episode, which I'm recording probably on the day of you watching this, with Simon March, who is a former FPL winner. And it's going to be a psychology and behavioral economics episode where we talk about how you can use psychology to help you in FPL. It will be super interesting, I think. So do check out that FPL therapy episode. But other than that, I'm probably going to have a few days off. There will be maybe a video coming towards the end of this week, going into next week. But I hope you enjoy the break as well. And yeah, let me know what your plans are for Game Week 8 and beyond. So guys, there we have it. That is my Game Week 8 transfer plans video. Hopefully you did enjoy. And if you did, please do smash that like button. And if you've watched to this point, but you're not yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing. Until next time, which who knows when it'll be, about a week. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.